Okay, so I think we'll get rolling for the sake of time, but good morning, bonjour, welcome everybody. So glad to have everyone here this morning. And before we kick things off, my name is Robin Seidel. I'm from the Calgary Hub. I'm also the co-chair of the Climate and Environment Steering Committee for the Global Shaper community. And yeah, before we actually begin the session, I'll pass it to George for a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Robin. Anitra, are we able to throw up the slides there? See if they... While that's loading, I guess, I'll introduce myself. My name is George Benson. I'm in the Vancouver Hub here. I'm one of our co-leads for Climate and Environment. I also sit on the Global Climate and Environment Steering Committee with Robin, and we're so excited to have Parliamentary Secretary Ali Ehsassi with us today to talk about building back better from the COVID-19 economic crisis. I said that so glibly, to talk about building back better from the COVID-19 economic crisis. If we can flick to the next slide, please, Anitra. And while we're waiting for that, I'll just say that, you know, many of us are probably zoomed out at this point. There are a lot of digital meetings going on. I'm sure the Parliamentary Secretary has been to many of them. But, you know, it strikes me, and I think many of us in this work, that at a time when we're feeling more disconnected from one another than ever, now is the time to sort of dig deep, to feel our roots, to feel a connection to the land, to understand the relationships we have to each other and that we have to the planet and the environmental communities around us. And so in saying that, I think it's really important to acknowledge for myself that I'm speaking to you from the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And as you can see from this great map from nativeland.ca, you know, we are all gathered on a variety of territories, and we have the unique privilege of being able to speak to one another across all the territories of what is now called Canada, and in some cases people may be further abroad or further at large than that. But I want to invite us all to think about that, keep that in our minds together, and to share actually in the chat what territories you're gathered on and joining us from today. And that as we talk about the economic recovery and a variety of other social ills that we want to right coming out of COVID-19, that we keep reconciliation with Indigenous peoples as a central pillar, a core priority of that work moving forward. So thank you all for being here. We're grateful for the land that we're able to gather on, and I very much look forward to the conversation. Back to you, Robin.
There you go. Thank you so much, George. If we could go to the next slide, that would be great. Oh, I think this one's you, George.
My bad. So for the logistics for today, if you're a participant right now, you're muted because this is a webinar format. When we get to the open Q&A section, there'll be a variety of opportunities to ask questions to the Parliamentary Secretary. So I'll let you unmute yourself and ask those. During that, we'll ask you to raise your hand just so we don't have a sort of smattering of people jumping in. And just generally today, you know, we're going to ask everyone, even though the discussion is limited, to listen and understand, to really try to delve into where we're all coming from in these difficult times, to take space and make space. You know, if you're the first person to raise your hand, maybe give a second and let someone else dive in first. We're going to try to speak at a common level of understanding here. There's going to be some technical terms thrown around, and if you're finding things are a little bit complicated or you're hearing words that are new to you, then please throw that in the chat. Let's explain together and work through everything. We're gonna know that there's going to be differences. There's lots of different priorities for the recovery, but we want to assume that everyone's coming from the right place and understand that work from that assumption until proven otherwise. And of course, during this, take care of your needs. You got to run to the washroom. You got a kid in the background. You got a dog that's coming at you. We're all human, and COVID-19, I think, underlines that more than ever. So please take care of yourselves during this. Now I'll turn it over to Robin. Thanks.
Thanks so much, George. So just before we begin, I'm just going to run through a little bit about what the Global Shapers community is about for those that aren't aware. So the Global Shapers community is a community and network of young people driving dialogue, action, and change. We were convened by the World Economic Forum back in 2011, so we're hitting our 10-year anniversary next year, which is exciting. But it's a community of inspiring and passionate young people that are working together to address social change in their communities, but also at a global level. And typically we're under the age of 33. So we believe in a world where young people are central to solution building, policy making, and lasting change. In terms of our size, if you want to go to the next slide. So we're a community of over 10,000 young people from around the world with over 430 hubs or city-based teams in over 150 countries. And we're really united by our common values of inclusion, collaboration, and shared decision-making. So together, Shapers create projects and positive change for their communities through their hubs and are considered impartial and independent and can't be informed by any political, cultural, racial, or religious bias. So we're a very inclusive community, and we're looking to make kind of local change, but also have a global impact. And across Canada, I believe from coast to coast to coast, we have about 9 hubs made up of about 20 or more members in each hub. So I'll pass it back to you, George, and thanks again.
Okay, thank you so much, Robin. We now have a really distinct, we're in a really unique position here today to speak with the Parliamentary Secretary. And so we sort of laid our intentions here as follows. We want to ask some real questions about the building back better from the COVID-19 crisis. We want to understand what the role of youth is, what the plans of government are, and how we can shape something together that really benefits all the groups and causes that we're also passionate about. Part of that is going to be learning about what the Government of Canada is planning to undertake and what it's already doing, and how youth can help shape what comes next. How do we play a role in that? And then finally, and this is near and dear to my heart as someone who works in economic development, create more space for young people to get involved in economic decision making. And we'll have some ideas about that towards the end. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so the structure of today is, in a second, you're going to hear from the Parliamentary Secretary. He's going to give a little background on himself and some of the work that he does through innovation, science, and economic development. You're going to hear a dialogue between 3 youth leaders and the Parliamentary Secretary, where they're going to ask a series of preset questions and have a bit of dialogue around some core issues we think are going to be really crucial as part of the economic recovery. Then we're going to switch to an open Q&A. So any of you can dive in and ask questions of the Parliamentary Secretary. And then finally, we'll conclude with some remarks from the Shapers and a little bit about what we think can come next. And we're going to do that in the next 49 minutes. So with that, if we can go to the, I think I'll turn it over to Robin to just get a sense of who's in the room and what's going on. Sorry, Robin, you're muted.
Thanks, George. I think we have a couple of polling questions, so maybe we can pop those up. And yeah, we would just love to know kind of where you're joining from and what age range do you fall in within the Global Shaper community, just for, yeah, out of curiosity of who's joining from across the country. So feel free to submit that. Awesome.
We'll give people.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We're almost there. We have a couple more people to weigh in.
Okay. Just hit the last button, Laura. Awesome. And maybe while it's happening, George, I'll pass it to you to introduce the Parliamentary Secretary.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, we're waiting for those results to come in. I think, Mr. Ehsassi, I think you would have been a very key candidate for the Global Shapers when you were in doing some of your studying and work. Mr. Ehsassi has a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Toronto, Bachelor of Law from Osgoode Hall, Master of Economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and a Master's of Law from Georgetown University. He was first elected as a Member of Parliament for Willowdale in 2015. He was born in Geneva, raised in New York City and Tehran. He moved to New York City with his family in his early teens. And before entering politics, he worked as a lawyer in the private sector and then as a public servant at the provincial and federal levels. He sees himself as a community leader working to strengthen the local economy, bringing both investment and sustainable infrastructure to local communities and strengthening Canada's position on human rights around the world. We're very, very grateful to have Parliamentary Secretary Ali Ehsassi with us today, and we'll turn it over to you for a bit of overview of yourself and what you're bringing to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that incredibly kind and gracious introduction. It's amazing to be with all of you in the context of global economic shapers. And allow me to say right off the bat that I've had a chance to have a few minutes of a chat with all of you who have been putting this program together. And it's not only impressive, but intimidating. And you started off by saying that, you know, if I were your age, I'd be in global shapers. Not true at all. One of the things that was happening before I got into public life is I would see all these incredible CVs that would come to firms that I was working at. And believe me, the quality of experiences that young people bring to bear were light years ahead of the little things that people like I would get involved with before I entered into the job market. But it's important for me to emphasize at the outset that this is more in the nature of a dialogue, and I'm really here to listen because I'm really riveted by the breadth and depth of expertise that you bring to the task at hand. But that having been said, I'll just say a few things if I may. I'm pleased to be with you to discuss issues that are central to the mandate of my department, which is Department of Innovation and Industry. And I think it's important that we have these discussions as we continue to adjust to the new normal of the COVID-19 pandemic. The role of the innovation sector in the post-COVID-19 economic recovery, as well as youth engagement, is very, very important to what we do and the decisions we will be making. We've been impressed with the extent to which Canadians from coast to coast to coast have come forward to assist in the COVID-19 response. Innovators from all sectors of the economy have stepped up in a very meaningful way to grapple with the challenges presented by our current context. That partnership approach with industry, academia, and thought leaders like yourselves will continue to guide us and carry us through this difficult pandemic. And we will continue to engage a broad range of stakeholders as we are stronger together. Now, you might have heard that the Prime Minister says this often, but I think it really rings true today. He always likes to say, young people are not just the leaders of tomorrow, you truly are the leaders of today. Young people have been at the forefront of change throughout history, and it's no wonder why. You bring necessary and diverse perspectives to the real and pressing issues that our world is facing. This is especially the case for climate change and the need to chart a green economic recovery. And you are the ones entering the workforce today, which will likely be one that looks very different than the one I joined. For example, before the pandemic, the government launched a digital charter to lay out principles for moving forward in an increasingly more digital economy. That remains even more true today, as we saw with the almost overnight shift to the virtual workforce. The span of your careers will likely see new businesses and delivery models, new digital skill sets, new workplace cultures, and maybe new jobs that don't even exist today. As the world faces this unprecedented time of COVID-19, we know it can sometimes feel overwhelming, but young people have always risen to the challenge with new ideas, tenacity, and grit. The government, our government, believes in you and your ideas. That's why we've invested, for example, $270 million in support for innovative startups and young entrepreneurs throughout Canada's Industrial Research Assistance Program, as well as through other programs such as IRAP and Futurepreneur. And we will continue to support your transition into the workplace so you can help shape an innovative new world around us. But it's not just workplace changes that you will see, but a shift in issues that we are all grappling with. Prior to the outbreak, Canada's economy was doing exceptionally well. But entering 2020, global economic growth was already facing a slowdown. Then, of course, the pandemic hit, giving us, as the OECD just called it, one of the most serious economic retractions this century. This pandemic is unlike other economic shocks we have seen and experienced, and it will require, of course, unique solutions, and you are all uniquely situated to offer those solutions and your perspective on these issues. So to deal with this shock, the government has provided unprecedented support to Canadian workers and businesses to meet their immediate liquidity needs. But a shock of this scale means that our economy will likely have to contend with shaken consumer confidence and lingering uncertainty for the foreseeable future. The government had done and will continue to do a lot of work to refocus and realign the support that we provide for industries. That is, we are not starting from scratch in terms of our restart efforts. Though the innovation and skills plan we provided supports Canadians and businesses to help them at all stages of growth and throughout their careers, and those programs are even more important today. Canada's COVID-19 economic response plan to date has helped to protect millions of jobs, and it has provided emergency support to families and kept businesses afloat throughout the pandemic. Now, as we think ahead to our long-term recovery, the Government of Canada will always put Canadians first as we work to build a resilient economy that is fairer for everyone. We know that there are highly differential impacts to sectors across our economy, and we know that impacts vary by region, with varying needs across provinces and territories. We know some transformation, some adaptation, and in some cases, some reinvention or reimagining, if you will, may be required for long-term sustainability in a post-COVID economy. In particular, I think it's safe to say that the pandemic has pushed to the forefront the need for digital transformation. Even traditional manufacturing and resource sectors are being revolutionized by platform technologies where connectivity and data have tremendous potential to transform, adapt, and create new business services and models for the modern economy. A data-driven digital economy can help advance Canada's recovery efforts and our future competitiveness. And I'm excited to see what you will do to advance it. Despite our challenging times, we also find ourselves in a moment where we have lots of opportunity and an ability to shape how we want the economy of the future to look. This means acting in a way that taps into new sustainable markets while ensuring a safe, sustainable, and greener economic recovery. It also means supporting young entrepreneurial talent and talent in our populations that have been underrepresented. Fundamentally, we need to support a more competitive, dynamic, resilient, and of course, as you all know, a more inclusive economy for all Canadians. I look forward to working with everyone here to continue to create the conditions for our collective success as we work to build a healthy, more resilient, and more prosperous country for everyone. Thank you very much to each and every one of you.
Thank you so much, Parliamentary Secretary. Wonderful opening remarks, and I'll turn it over to Robin here to kick us off into the discussion.
Thanks, George. So we have a wonderful group of panelists here today to ask just some initial discussion questions to help kick us off. And folks that are on the call that are not panelists, oh, we also have the results. Look at that. Okay, maybe we can go through that. I hope everyone can see that on their screen. So we have folks kind of calling in from across the country. For the most part, I guess Saskatchewan, Northwest Territory is not on the call today, but it's a good thing, and Manitoba, but we'll be recording the session and also sharing it amongst the Global Shaper Network as well as other youth networks. And then age range there too, kind of all throughout, from 18 to 30, so, or maybe a few years older than that as well. So that's interesting to know. Thank you. So to kick us off, we have a couple of panelists, but again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or also raise your hand. We will be doing a Q&A after the few questions that we have to kick off the discussion. So I'll be able to call on you. You can unmute yourself and ask your question at that time. But to start, I believe I'll be passing it to Rita to kick us off on the first question. So Rita, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Robin. I'll just introduce myself before the question. My name is Rita. I'm here in Vancouver, BC, on the lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. And the first question that I have for Parliamentary Secretary Ehsassi is related to skilling for youth as part of the recovery effort. So as we know, youth have been some of the hardest hit during the pandemic, and this was at a time where wages were already fairly stagnant, and there were already disruptions that youth were seeing on the horizon for the future of their work, such as job automation and climate change. So now that we've been hit with an additional challenge with the COVID-19 pandemic, this question is, in your view, what are emerging elements or strategies for skilling and building capacity among young workers as part of this recovery effort? And how can youth position themselves to help best shape government priorities around this skill building, whether that's through future work in the throne speech or the budget for 2021?
A great question, Rita. First of all, let me comment that I saw the numbers of participants, and it's incredible to see so many people participating from out west, even though it is very early in the morning there. So, so it's incredible to see that particular trend. You're absolutely right, Rita. Even before the challenges of COVID reared its ugly head, there were certain aspects of our economy that we were very much focused on. And one was the pipeline of talent that our youth have and making sure that it's utilized to the benefit of our economy and to the benefit of various companies and entities to make sure that they are tapping into this incredible talent. So what COVID has essentially done is it's exacerbated some of those challenges which previously existed as well. Because of that, and recognizing full well that we have to do a much better job, our government is consistently in touch with experts whose job it is to map out these challenges, and organizations that know full well what those challenges are for youth. For example, MyTax has been doing an incredible job, and our government has been in close contact with them. There's also the National Research Council, or the Business Higher Education Roundtable. So what we consider our challenge to be is to keep our eyes focused on these particular challenges, to make sure that not only our youth have the resources to retool, but also that our companies appreciate full well the incredible expertise that young Canadians have. As you all know, study after global study will tell you that we should be very, very proud of our workforce, and in particular, our youth. We have the best educated youth in the world. And that obviously is something that bodes our country well. It bodes the future labor market well. But we have to make sure that these connections take place and young people are allowed to flourish. Now, as you know, some people some commentators have been criticizing our approach to the economy. But in reality, if you look at it from March and April, we've come back in a very significant way. If you look at the employment numbers, we since April, 2 million new jobs have been created. So we're still behind. We're 94% of where we would have been had COVID not happened. So it's important that we remain focused on this challenge, make sure that we present opportunities for youth. So hopefully we can hit the 100% and even exceed that. And a big part of the conversations that are taking place in the corridors right now are making sure that we are going about this in a sensible fashion and that we deal with issues such as youth employment. We deal with other vulnerable sectors. Women have been hit much harder by COVID-19. And also another vulnerable group, of course, is seniors. So we have our eyes on the ball and we will do everything it takes. We owe it to this country to make sure that we come back out of this stronger and better than before.
Thank you. I'm curious, during these discussions about the challenges that you're facing, are there any sort of trending or emerging strategies that feel really innovative for you or new that you think are going to be coming up as solutions during this recovery process?
Well, there are, but I think it's important that I highlight that there is so much at stake. It is so important that we take a sober look at the best means to work our way through this challenge. That's our job, to be as prudent as possible. So what you do see is different ministries come at it with different perspectives. And that's an incredible thing to watch and to be part of, because we owe it to Canadians to look into details and to various perspectives to be brought to bear to the table to make sure that essentially, as we always put it, you dot your I's and you cross your T's, and we're not missing out in terms of looking forward on the horizon and making sure that we're doing it in a comprehensive and sophisticated fashion. But the reality is we have always understood that, first of all, we have to continue to invest as a country in new technologies. We have to understand how important science and technology is. For that very reason, as you know, we now have a chief science advisor. Since the day we were first elected in 2015, no one has seen any government in our past invest as much in science and technology. And of course, as you know, all of these come together. The Prime Minister during the first 4 years was not only Prime Minister, the only other thing that he was very keen on was to serve as Minister of Youth. So it's about bringing all of these diverse perspectives and understandings and comprehending how these things have to come together seamlessly to make sure that as a country, we work our way through this and hopefully we roar our back forward, stronger, more resilient, and more inclusive than in the past.
Thank you. Do you think that there's anything that youth can do to position themselves to be ready for these solutions and for the recovery and for the new future of work?
Well, to be very honest, we do. And I really, truly mean this from the bottom of my heart. We do. Our youth are the best educated youth anywhere to be found in the world. So our job is to recognize that for the amazing reality that it is, and to make sure that young people are matched with appropriate opportunities. So you have all truthfully, and I really do always tell people, go look at all those international rankings. Young Canadians are so incredibly impressive. When one looks at what all of you have achieved, one can only marvel. So it's important that businesses be made aware of that governments fully appreciate that, to make sure that we can match the incredible talent that you all bring to the table with those opportunities that should be there. There is no doubt, as you may have heard, I said Canadian youth have grit. They understand technology better than people who are older. So given the challenges that we have, there is no doubt in my mind, and in the minds of other people in Ottawa, that that our youth are really going to set the pace, and you will be leading the way for a better tomorrow, so to speak.
Amazing, thank you. I hope that the global shapers and other youth leaders around the country can help the government fill that gap in terms of knowledge and understanding with businesses, and changing skills for youth, and how youth's new skills fit into the new economy, and new work and new jobs, and sort of bridging that education gap between businesses, employers, and young people. So thank you for that.
As I said, the important job for people in Ottawa, I believe, and I noted this in the first few remarks I made today, is that we shouldn't be talking, we should be listening. And your group and numerous other groups are doing a tremendous job in terms of advocacy, and it's important that we listen and make sure as a country we act responsibly and prudently, and create those opportunities that are very much required.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to shift over to Madison from Calgary. Madison, you want to introduce yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so my name is Madison. I'm in the Calgary Hub, which is based on Treaty 7 region on the traditional territories of Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina and Nakota Nations, as well as the Métis Nation. So I'll just jump right into my question. Even before COVID-19, Canada has had many challenges in thinking about its future, both from a climate and economic perspective. And my question is, how is the government to approach the idea of green recovery in a way that ensures meet our national government contributions to the Paris Agreement, at the same time as we support natural resource communities in their immediate time of economic need, and in the longer term work of achieving a just transition?
Absolutely. Great question, Madison. The reality of the matter is, and I've been incredibly fortunate to see this, since this pandemic started, what our Prime Minister and my minister in particular, Minister Baines, did is there was a clarion call to Canadian companies to say, we really need you. You are leading the way, and we want to hear about your expertise. So in my role, I can tell you that my ministry was in contact with 6,000 companies across this country, because we just wanted to hear from them what they have to offer and how they can help us all work our way through COVID-19. And I really do mean this. One can only marvel at the expertise that these Canadian companies from coast to coast brought to the task at hand and responded to the Made in Canada campaign. In the course of those discussions, one thing that was really new to me was I really, it's one thing to read about things that our companies are incredibly high tech. They are leading the way, they're cutting edge. but it's quite another to be, you know, a listener in on these calls and to really see that so many different sectors of our economy are so incredibly innovative in numerous sectors. I could rattle off for you. They are. So the important thing is that we continue to see that transformation where we're not just good at producing innovative ideas, but that we know how to apply the incredible expertise that's there to real life realities and situations. And that's why this is a very big part of the conversations that are happening. Of course, everyone appreciates that we have challenges, but it's important that we think greener, that we think long-term. So, I mean, this is getting a bit hollowed out, but that we build back better, more resiliently, and that we take advantage of the technological and innovative capacity of various companies across our country.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I'm seeing a question here from Alice that I really like in the group chat there. It's a question about measuring the economy from different standards. So more looking at circular economy and different ways of measuring that. Is that something that is being put into place as a strategy for determining, you know, different metrics on how we're recovering?
Yes, I can tell you that is a big part of the conversation. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of people who are saying that shouldn't be our focus at this particular juncture. But I can assure you that no decisions have been made at this point. There's just many discussions taking place. I have no doubt and have every confidence that we will continue to focus on that, prioritize that, and no matter what people will say, we will say, no, that's not what we've been hearing from Canadians, and that it has to be greener, and we have to do things better than we did in the past.
Okay. And I'm also wondering too about how you see clean tech and new innovation. I know you've mentioned that a couple times being a focus of the government, but how you really see that playing a role and tangibly playing a role in recovery.
Well, the skill set is there. If you look at companies, our job as a government is to facilitate the employment of these strategies, to do whatever we can to make sure that they're incorporated in decision making and they're incorporated in infrastructure planning, and that we pave the way for that to be at the forefront of what does occur as we build back better.
Awesome, thank you. I have one more question from Alice. She's been killing it in this group chat here.
Madison, this is way too much. Like 2 questions, 3 now? No.
No, the second one was my question, but this one's another one from Alice. It's about strategies for diversifying industries that are very energy centric. So you see a lot of communities like Fort McMurray, for example, that are really based only on one industry. Is there strategies going forward that are going to diversify that as the energy sector diversifies?
Sure. Well, as you know, our job as a government is to take a national perspective on things. Doing this inclusively is not just about making sure that we're listening to young Canadians as much as we're listening to middle-aged and older Canadians, but also as a country to be more inclusive and to act responsibly and make sure that every region of the country is very much part and parcel of these discussions, and that we act in a collective manner that helps all our various regions. Now, every region has its own challenges. There's no doubt about that, but it's important that we not promote one region or pit one region against another. It's important that we all move forward together.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key, being able to move forward together and not making those divisions even larger than they already are. I think that's absolutely key. Thank
For
you so much for answering my questions.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank you. So just looking at time, I'm also just going to pass it now to Anjum to introduce herself and ask her question.
Great. It's been such a rich discussion, so I'm glad to be here. So my name is Anjum. I work at YWCA Canada. I lead the public policy work there. My other hat is I'm a global shaper in the Toronto hub on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. And my question is, because we've had a rich discussion on many different aspects, I'm going to zero in on a specific piece, and you already touched on it a bit earlier, on the fact that women have been hardest hit during this crisis, along with other communities such as new Canadians, newcomers, Black and Indigenous and racialized communities. And so we've seen the grim statistics. Women's labor market participation has dropped to levels not seen since the 1980s. We are seeing statistics that 1/3 of women workers are going to potentially leave the labor market because of care duties and other aspects. And so given this grim picture, there are solutions that civil society has put forward, such as the Feminist Economic Recovery Plan, which the Global Shapers community has supported and amplified, along with other types of plans. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what are some of the transformational things we could do right now to address the needs of women, racialized communities, and young people? And I'll say many people fall in multiple categories of those multiple groups. So myself, I'm a young woman, I'm a racialized person, and I'm also an immigrant. So I'm seeing this in my circles as well. And I'll leave before passing it over to you. A report from the UN came out last week talking about this pandemic is going to hit women the hardest, but specifically women in the age group of 25 to 34, which many of our shapers are in. So given all this, what is the government's approach at looking at recovery through an intersectional lens? Over to you.
You're absolutely right. Regrettably, there have been some setbacks because of COVID-19. One of the setbacks, just to put it in perspective, is in the first 4 years that we were elected, I think, truthfully, and I can speak for myself, I think the greatest achievement is we lifted 1 million Canadians out of poverty. That is truly an incredible feat. But now, because of COVID, we're sliding back. That's one thing. And of course, in terms of inclusivity, that's a big challenge. The other thing is, and I've heard this from day one, and as you rightly point out, there's a lot of data to support this. This is often referred to as a she session. And there is no doubt that the impact has been much more difficult on women than it has on men. So that being the reality of this, and of course I can't divulge all the details that you will see in the throne speech, but I can assure you this is front and center insofar as decision makers in Ottawa are concerned. This is a huge challenge, and we can't ignore it. We have to essentially grab the bull by the horn and make sure that we do not slide back. Not only do we not slide back, but that we incorporate elements of a plan that will focus on this challenge and make sure that the best of our abilities, we deal with the barriers, make sure that women are not hit harder than other segments of our society. But again, the biggest thing I think we can all appreciate, having experiences, challenges of COVID, is we get it. This is about all of us coming together, being more inclusive. If we're not, if we're pitting one region against another, or if we're going down rabbit holes and we're not inclusive in every sense of the word possible, then we're not going to succeed. It's important that we do this collectively, that we pull together, that we are cognizant of the challenges this has created, and we march forward to.
That's great to hear, and I really appreciate the gender-sensitive approach the government and your answer has alluded to. So one piece in particular that civil society, young people across the country are quite concerned with is just the economic losses that have hit sectors such as food services, retail, hospitality, tourism, many sectors that communities I mentioned before are overrepresented in. And it's unclear if those jobs will ever come back in the same way or at all. So it really demands a sector transition or for people to have the opportunity to pivot careers, pivot jobs. So is there, what role or what are the types of things ISID is thinking about when it comes to skills transition, upskilling, because it appears that's going to be one of the reasons why people have lost their jobs. Their jobs are no longer there. And there's other reasons too, such as childcare, which we kind of discussed a bit. But what around the skills transition are you seeing on the horizon?
You're, again, absolutely right. The reality is that the workplace is always evolving. There's no doubt about that. That has always been a constant. However, COVID has really shaken it up and exacerbated that trend whereby workplaces are constantly changing. But I can assure you that our government is committed to investing in human resource development, if you will, and also that young Canadians are a whole lot more adaptable and flexible and more capable of making those changes to make sure that they keep up with conform to changes in the workforce. So we will do, you guys have again done your job because of the brilliant minds that you are, but we will make sure that we introduce measures which recognize the changing workforce and make it easier for various sectors of our economy to tap in to the incredible talents that you bring to the table.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to working with you on some of the measures you've outlined. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I'll pass it over to Robin.
Thanks, and I'm sorry, my mute button wasn't working for a second, or my unmute button. We got a couple other questions just in the chat here. May asked around a question about rural internet connectivity. So her question is, many rural communities don't have adequate internet speeds. There's a lot of loss of human potential here, I think, especially now, given we're looking to recover from COVID. So what can we do to increase internet connectivity?
Just so everyone does know, Minister Monsef, who is the minister responsible for rural development, she has spoken up very strongly on the need that rural connectivity is a big challenge, especially during periods like this. So there are going to be outlays of money for rural connectivity. We had already committed to targets to make sure that that divide is no longer there. But we recognize that given the realities that we all face, this is even more of a priority, and we should do everything within our power to address this on a more expeditious time frame. And that is, there have been outlays of investment, but we have to even do a better job to move up those deadlines and those targets, because this is rural connectivity is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. Our youth in various parts of the country depend on this. Families depend on this. Seniors depend on this. So we are moving up those targets which we had previously committed to.
Thank you. And if anyone would like to ask their question live, feel free just to raise your hand in the participant chat thing so that we can flag you and you can ask your question. In the meantime, Alice.
We have time for about 2 more.
Yeah, okay, cool. 2 more questions. So I think Alice had another question. Alice is just on fire today. So COVID-19 saw many changes. Oh, sorry, it just jumped on me. Okay, so saw many changes to our supply chains and an emphasis on local economies. Is the federal government looking at exporting less of our raw materials and actually bringing some of those processing and manufacturing businesses inside our borders?
This is something that is at the top of the list of priorities for a lot of countries. It is for us as well. It's important that we be there for the manufacturing sector, that to the extent that there has been hollowing out, that we respond to that and make sure that we are there for the manufacturing sector. Sorry, what was the first part? The first part of your question, you said, are we going to make sure that we're diversifying our exports?
More so, how do we actually shift the, oh wait, sorry, this is the second question.
I think it's more about repatriating supply back to, like, manufacturing back to Canada.
Absolutely, that's very much at the something that a lot of big people are talking about. We appreciate that that's a huge challenge, as are other countries as well. What you will hear is that in the past, supply chains were it was all about efficiency. Now we have to make sure that those supply chains are resilient and that they can withstand challenges that we've had to contend with over the course of the past 6 months. So yes, that is definitely at the a lot of people are thinking long and hard about this particular issue as well.
Okay, thank you. And I see a couple of questions. Maybe I'm going to try to merge them. So Rita asks, are there emerging industries that the government is recognizing as the future for young professionals? And then related maybe to that would be Alice's question of how do we remove the stigma around pursuing a post-secondary degree and really kind of uplifting skilled trade pursuits instead, if that's an area that you think that we need to build out in this country.
I think, to be honest with you, it's not for any government to actually say what the future labor market will look like. That is something that young Canadians understand much better than any government does. So what we understand is that innovation is important, investing in young Canadians is important, investing in high tech is important. But as to specifically what sectors will do better than others, that's not something that we do, other than to recognize that we all have to retool and change our skill set to remain adaptable as the workplaces, I should say, around us certainly change.
Thank you. And maybe just a last question before we wrap up. George, I know you have a few comments that you'd like to share at the end. So another comment was just, or I guess comment and then question. So we were very grateful for I guess all of the support the government has offered. And I know we have a few shapers. So me also said, I know my family has benefited a lot. She says, I'm staying mindful that folks our age, however, will be paying it back for decades at the time when housing and other large expenses are larger than they have ever been. So how is the government making the trade-off between offering support right now and managing the debt load?
Well, as you all know, we had an incredibly enviable fiscal record before we got into COVID-19. There's no doubt that fiscally Canada and Germany had the best fiscal record. As you will have heard, we had the fiscal firepower, if you will, to be there to support Canadians. And I think it's really important to bear in mind that the reason why we have done as well as we have, pulling through these difficult circumstances, is truthfully, the biggest factor has been the incredible sacrifices that every single Canadian has made. That was a game changer. So we have to recognize that. And we have to, as a government, make sure that we adopt policies which recognize the dynamic whereby are you better off investing in certain things and making sure that employers are not untethered from their workplaces, recognize that there are certain areas where investing by the government will have larger reverberations and better reverberations for the future prosperity of the country. That is what economic thinkers have been grappling with. Where is it prudent for us to be investing, even though it may seem irresponsible just looking at those balance sheets sometimes. If you don't do those things in the long terms, you will have much bigger problems to contend with. So this is something that great minds are very much focused on to make sure that we're responsible in terms of our investments are concerned. But again, I think it's important to emphasize that as a country prior to COVID, we had one of the most positive balance sheets, and it's important that we continue to act in a responsible fashion.
Thank you so much. And just maybe one concluding question for you, just to kind of summarize everything that's been talked about. But so what is the one thing that I think that youth can do to engage in our green and just recovery? If you could say one thing that we can do going forward as young people to get engaged and involved in the process of our recovery, what would that be?
That's a difficult thing to say. What I will say is that there is a dialogue going on all around us, all around each and every single one of us. I've seen how incredible the advocacy that you have done has been. I've seen other organizations do incredible advocacy as well. It's important at times like this, which are unprecedented, that youth very much be part of that national dialogue. You understand the science a whole lot better than other sectors of our economy. You understand what the long-term needs of our country should be. So please be engaged, not only on national discussions, but amongst people that you all know, so you can emphasize to individuals how important it is that we move forward in a responsible, sophisticated fashion, and that we build back better. A lot of times what you will see is, I do apologize, but a lot of people, they're so busy with their lives that they don't have the most up-to-date information as to what is being done around the world to make sure that countries emerge from this bigger and better. But you all know what you want the future of our beautiful country to look like. And so speak up, not just on the national stage, but to individuals that you know around you, to organizations, so they appreciate full well what your priorities are.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our panelists. George, I'll pass it to you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Parliamentary Secretary, for engaging with us over the course of the last hour here. we are going to conclude here by saying thank you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate everyone else's time who's able to participate. The Global Shapers, as you probably saw, we were recording this session. We're going to dig through this, pick out some of the nuggets that were really relevant, and we're going to follow up with your office with a list of some of what we heard, as well as a package of some of the really relevant work that's in this space. So through your office, you maybe saw we submitted a letter to the Government of Canada around a youth skills strategy and some of the work we think needs to be done there. Anjum's amazing work on the Feminist Recovery Plan for Canada. There was some work that many of us participated in with corporate nights around building back better. So there's a kind of package or a bundle of things that we think are relevant here that we'd love to share with you. What we'd like to close with is we understand through your office that, that there are a series of roundtables and conversations taking place through the form of the Industry Strategy Council. And when speaking with your office, we understand that there has not yet perhaps been a focus on youth inclusion in those spaces. But we would like to propose to you that there is, in fact, actually a really rich opportunity. And through, I think, a lot of our experiences on similar councils and boards and so on, that youth actually bring a lot to the table in those spaces. So we'd like to put to you that we think that there's an opportunity, not just for Shapers, but for young Canadians across the board to help sit at the table and to help shape those strategies. And so we're going to take a stronger look at that and bring some ideas forward to you, but we want to put on the table that that we think there's, as you say, we can roll up our sleeves and help out, and we are very, very keen to do so because just across our community, we have folks working in artificial intelligence, in clean tech, in the caring economy, in decolonization and reconciliation. There is an absolute incredible trust of folks that can help out. We would like to offer our services, so to speak, in those environments. So we're looking forward to following up with you about those suggestions and ideas, and we're really grateful for your time. So thank you all so much. And Parliamentary Secretary, if you want to have a closing word, please feel free. But at that, I'll thank everyone, and we really appreciate your time.
That's a brilliant suggestion. Thank you for saying that, and consider me signed up on that particular initiative. I will try my darndest to make sure that that oversight is correct. Absolutely.
We appreciate that.
So we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you all so much. I appreciate your time, and everyone have a great afternoon. I think as you're heading into the East Coast, and those of us on the West Coast, just have a great work day as you're starting it.